Hello, it is Global Talent Acquisition Day. I would like to offer some thoughts today on this day and the profession that I love, which is recruiting. One of the biggest challenges that we all face right now is a shortage for talent. And one of the things that is a reality is also the changing landscape of the job market as well. Right now, there are a lot of things going on in talent. For one, artificial intelligence is becoming more prevalent. The gig economy is flourishing and continuing on. That will never stop. I think that's going to be a constant. There's also a few other things from the standpoint of recruiting that I think is also relevant. Increasingly, as employers look at the marketplace and what's ahead, I do think it is absolutely essential to continue to increase candidate experience. So, what does that look like? So, candidate experience is one of those things that's talked about quite a bit, but it's increasingly more and more important because you can look at all these different trends in TA. One is artificial intelligence in recruiting. You could look at technology. You could look at the influence of the recruiters network. You can look at a wide variety of different topics as it relates to the overall career path. But the number one thing that hiring managers can do is to really influence the hiring process. Quite simply, for the long haul, is candidate experience. Now, what does that look like? A candidate experience is generally one that comes down to how was the interview structured? Did they use the STAR format in interviews? Situation, task or time, actions, results. Did they utilize, were they compliant with existing HR laws in the countries that they are operating in? Did they look at the talent that they're trying to recruit or the people they're trying to recruit in the lens of a human being and in the way that they try to attract that talent? You see, what's happening and becoming more relevant, and one of the biggest problems that we face right now is the reality that hiring managers often do bad things in the interview process. Quite simply, not getting back to their candidates after they've made a hiring decision. Other things that they do that are really a problem is also how do they attract that talent through the door? It just can't be about treating people like a number anymore. You can't just post a job and expect someone to apply. You have to go out and engage the talent before the need exists. And this is what I call proactive talent acquisition, is one of those concepts which is maybe foreign to some companies. I mean, really, the way some companies operate is they post a role, and suddenly there are people who, just don't think about the overall view of how that candidate's being treated. So let's just talk about this. Think of if you were to think of your candidates in the same way you would your customers. Would you treat a customer in a way where you forgot about them? Would you not approach that candidate in a human manner? Meaning, would you come at them like they're a piece of meat? Would you, in the interview process, would you put that customer through 10 rounds of interviews? Would you go out and, make your application a nightmare to fill out? Would you go and make it inefficient with 4 or 5 weeks before you get back to an interviewed candidate? Would you, so on and so forth, right? So think about this. I have to ask myself this question sometimes. What is it that goes through hiring managers' minds? What is it that they do that unfortunately drives people away from their process? Quite simply, it's just a simple thing. It's not closing the loop. It's making it difficult to have conversations. It's just making it extremely hard. They're reactive. Many of these organizations have made their process so inefficient that there's no re-engineering of the process to make it stronger and better. Let me get to the heart of what that means. It means that, you're not looking at your talent bench before you need it. You don't have workforce planning, so you don't know strategically what your needs are. You go to your job description and it reads like a jumbled mess on the page, and there's no substance to that job. It's just one thing after another. So today, I have to give a shout out to Amy Miller on my channel, and I want to just say something that she pointed out today. She found something about a hiring manager who wanted to have people call him. So first of all, what he did is he rejected a bunch of candidates just because they didn't reach out to him or follow up with a personal message. Now, let me say something about that real quick. If you have a bunch of candidates and you say to them, oh, the only way I'm going to hire you is if you reach out to me directly. Well, first of all, what that does is it causes a big issue. One, it could be seen as discriminatory with certain practices if you're doing something a certain way, or it could be a big nightmare. Just basically what's going to happen is the word's going to get out that you're a jerk and you don't really care about any qualified candidate. So here's the deal, it just the hiring managers who make their process 10 interviews long, the hiring managers that add another wrinkle to their screening process that really wasn't there before, So on that posting, the gentleman was requiring people have a personalized follow-up to him. Now, if they hired a similar position and they didn't require that for any other candidate, a candidate could come back and say, well, you didn't require that before, you just went ahead and hired, and your process is inconsistent. The worst thing you can do from a legal perspective in hiring is treat people in a way that is, unfair. So, it's going to come back and bite you. So this is a big problem, and many organizations don't take it in stride to make sure that they're treating their candidates as a human being instead of a piece of meat. You see, there is something to be said for that. Candidate experience is all about treating your candidate as a customer. So the next time when you have a position and you are treating that candidate poorly, if that candidate invests time in the process, if they take energy in the process, treat them with dignity and respect. It seems so simple. And in this day where technology is king and you've got artificial intelligence as the new buzzword, and everybody's looking at every single little thing about how artificial intelligence can speed up the hiring process. Well, if you neglect one small thing, and that is the human element, the person-to-person connections that drive recruiting experiences, well, I'm just sad to say that is a recipe for disaster. So, this is a vlog on my part here about the candidate hiring experience on Global TA Day. I just think people need to be smarter about how they treat their candidates. That's it. That's the big deal. Now, this also goes into diversity as well. I want to talk about that real quick. There's a lot of companies that talk about diversity out there. A new word that's coming, there's diversity and inclusion, but they're also talking about belonging. I think belonging is a very appropriate word for what we want to accomplish as human beings in our businesses. It doesn't matter if you are, someone who is, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, really. The key is you got to get to the heart of what matters from a talent perspective and focus on that. If your organization is seen as a human-friendly company, in other words, race suddenly becomes less of an issue. It's not the lens which you're looking through. You're actually looking at it from, oh, if I hire a candidate who comes from, or candidates from multiple backgrounds, I'm going to have a better customer service experience because they're going to be able to relate to all the segments of my customer population. You see what I'm saying? You're changing the paradigm. You're starting to transform the way people think about TA. In other words, it's no longer about driving the train in the direction of correcting past wrongs. That's a noble goal, by the way. But it is making it all about the center of talent, which is the human being. So it becomes more human again. So my whole thing is make the hiring process human again, focus on that. Get back to the grit of what that meant. So, people are, let's just ask this question. How would you feel if you are a hiring manager and the tables are turned and the hiring manager you went to interview with a week ago falls off the face of the planet, doesn't even give you an update, doesn't even say anything. You're just gone, They wound up hiring a person, you see the posting disappear, you're like, okay, they must have filled it. But how does that leave you feeling? Does it leave you feeling neglected? Does it make you feel like you were just a number and that they were just doing a cattle call and bringing people in to fill a seat? That's the essence of what you're telling a candidate when you neglect the closure. Or even for that matter, when you ask stupid questions in the interview process, let's just call it what it is. You say stupid things about, oh, I see you're pregnant. Oh, does that mean you won't be able to come to work for a while? If you say something like that, you're really dumb, right? It's just not a good thing. And you wouldn't do that to anyone, really. If they're sitting in front of you, well, common sense is lacking many times. But here's the deal. I think it comes back to one thing. We need to get back to the core of what it means to be a human being in recruiting. Period. It doesn't matter what your background is. If the person's qualified and they have applied to you, or you've gone out and you've found them, give them the dignity and respect of telling them how they did in the interview. If they didn't get the job, just let them know. You don't have to give them a reason. One of the best, now that's another issue. I did see something today, post really caught my attention about candidate experience. I want to talk about that one. I saw a posting today, really interesting posting. They were talking about, I went to Reddit. Go check out Recruiting Hell sometime. Do yourself a favor. Go look at that website. Or that subreddit chain. Read some of the stories there. Okay? There was one today that made me smile. A candidate had the opportunity to get a gift card from Amazon from the employer he interviewed with. What a simple gesture, saying thank you. What about a handwritten note for every person that comes and sits in front of your interview team? Snail mail note, handwritten. Could you imagine? There is a company that had a CEO that would write every single candidate a note that interviewed in person. Handwritten note from the CEO. Now, let me tell you something. You get something like that going, word's going to get out about the employer brand, isn't it? Are you going to differentiate yourself from that other company down the street? Who's hiring the exact same candidate you want? Yes. Here at Where's Your Next, I want you to know there's just a different way of looking at talent, okay? We need to get back to the human element of it. That's it. That's it. It sounds so simple, but let me tell you something. Right now, I can name hundreds of recruiters that I know who've had horrible experiences with companies not getting back to them. Recruiters going for a recruiting role. Okay? I'm not going to name names. But do you think that employer brand is going to suffer a little bit when word gets out amongst the recruiters? Ooh, that's pretty bad. Okay? Now imagine those practices are happening on a larger scale for every single candidate who comes in the door. Candidate experience matters, folks. It's not just a tagline. It's not just something that you do to be trendy. It's a real thing. These are real human beings with real jobs, with real careers at stake, wanting to have a role. Give the people the dignity to close the dang loop. That's the message today. Think differently about how you treat people in the interview process. Think differently about how you treat every single candidate that applies on your website. Think differently about the candidates you reach out to for a role. Make your organization strategic from top to bottom, from the CEO all the way to the custodian. When your organization has a culture that starts from the top, where candidate experience matters, that culture becomes a Glassdoor best company to work for. Imagine what that does and transforms a brand. There are so many people out there that don't understand how important this is. It is very hard to recruit for a company that has a terrible employer brand. That's the reality. Companies that have a tight labor market, that's not their fault necessarily. But the ones who treat people really well and word is on the street that they do, that's a differentiated company. So imagine two candidates have the same offer. One treats the candidate badly. The other one treats them well. Where's that candidate going to go? Exact same offer. Think about that for a minute. In a 2% unemployment labor market, it becomes even more important. And as people start to retire and there's a baby boom retirement frenzy and a labor shortage gets even crazier, the reality is that employment brand becomes even more powerful. It'll become even more important over the years. Employment branding is one of those things that's also new, by the way. It was, at some point, it was owned by the marketing department out in some back office somewhere. Then companies started to discover what the employer brand meant. When I worked for ADP, they nurtured their employment brand with every single effort of the entire organization. It mattered. Recruiters were measured on how we treated people. Net Promoter Score for candidates. And in case you don't know what Net Promoter Score, it is a measurement of client satisfaction. So not only did you get measured on the hiring manager side, but you also got measured on the candidate side. So imagine if an organization invested and made it a requirement in their performance reviews that candidate experience was a key factor to the success. Things would change rapidly. So today, if you're benchmarking against other organizations, take a look at the Glassdoor best companies to work for list. Hands down, you'll see something that's different there. Happy employees, treated like human beings, and it carries over to the hiring process. So I don't know why people tend to think that it's okay not to treat people like human beings in recruiting. Never make any sense to me. Now, given and granted, right now I'm working with some great companies in my agency endeavors. I've got 3 solid, good clients that I'm working with right now. And every single one of them is awesome. And their employment brands are wonderful. So, and they've done a lot of good work. And they have a good reputation amongst the talent pools of the people within the area. So, just remember that it's a differentiator. And on Global TA Day, I just want to remind people, please treat people like human beings. Don't treat them like widgets. Treat them like you would want to be treated. The golden rule still matters, people. It's not something that was discarded long ago. It is still part of the importance of a good talent operation, period. And it needs to be treated that way. People deserve to be treated like human beings in recruiting. And me, for my part, I will always make my effort to close the loop to, help people that need to advance in their careers advance for all the right reasons. It doesn't matter what their background is to me. I just want to see people succeed that are a fit for my job. If they meet the qualifications, they deserve a shot. If they're professional, even better. You'd want the candidate to be professional. Imagine what it's like when you're not. It's awful. So, I know someone out there is hearing this and going to go, probably nodding, going, yep, that's for sure. But just remember how important it is. It is absolutely critical. Make connections with your talent folks beforehand. Get reaching out to the candidate pools before the needs arise. Get workforce planning in place. Make your organization less repetitive, less inefficient. Make it more efficient. Bring down the amount of interviews that it takes to get to a decision. Make sure your hiring leaders are trained on how to interview, please. Treat those candidates with dignity and respect. Give everybody a shot that is qualified. We're in a human business. Hiring is human. Bring back the human in hiring, please. That's the thought today from Where's Your Next? Until next time, signing off. Mike Rasmussen from Where's Your Next?